The Abraham Accord are a joint statement between Israel, United Arab Emirates, and the United States reached on 13th August 2020. Subsequently, the term was used to refer collectively to agreements between Israel and United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, respectively. The International Atomic Energy Agency (IAEA) is an international organization that seeks to promote peaceful use of nuclear energy to inhibit the use for military purpose, including nuclear weapons. The IAEA was established as an autonomous organization on 29 July 1957. The United States Department has clarified that there has been no change in America's Kashmir policy, and Washington still considers Kashmir as a territory disputed between India and Pakistan. The International Criminal Court investigates and, where wanted, tries individual charges with the gravest crime of concern to the international community: genocide, war crimes, crimes against humanity, and crime of aggression. The ICC was established by Rome Statute of International Crimes Court in 1998, and it began sitting on July 1, 2002, after 60 countries had ratified the Rome Statute. According to United Nations General Assembly, world loses 2.6 trillion on corruption annually. Malacca dilemma is the word coined in 2003 by the then Chinese President Hu Jintao. It is a term that represents potential factors that could hinder China's economic development through choking oil imports. The Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries (OPEC) is an intergovernmental organization of 13 countries founded on September 14, 1960 in Baghdad by the first 5 members. It has since 1965 been headquartered in Vienna, Austria, although Austria is not an OPEC member state. According to 2020 Lancet study, drug-resistant strains of bacteria infections claim at least 700,000 lives per year around the world. This death rate is projected to raise to 10 million patients per year by 2050, and the estimated cost of $100 trillion to the world economy. The Charter of United Nations was drafted and approved in 1945. Its stated objectives are to prevent war, forced occupation, and promote global justice. The key element of neoliberal policies are free market, minimal state intervention, flexible labor, and hinge on crucial principle on which according to Noam Chomsky, the undermining mechanism of social solidarity and mutual support, and popular engagement in determining policy. The Treaty of Open Skies establishes a program of unarmed aerial surveillance flights over the entire territory of its participants. This treaty is designed to enhance mutual understanding and confidence by giving all participants, regardless of size, a direct role in gathering information about the military forces and activities of concern to them. It entered into force in January 2002 and currently has 31 state parties. President Joe Biden declared transatlantic alliance is back, seeking to re-establish United States as leader of the West against what he calls as global assault on democracy. The broad objectives of the civil servants reforms have been listed here. Number 1, transparent merit-based recruitment with due regional representation, performance-based promotions, and compulsory training at all requisite levels. Number 3, equal opportunities for career advancement. Number 4, equality among cadres and non-cadres of all public servants. Number 5, guarantees of living wage, a decent retirement package, security and of tenure for specific period, separate cadre of regular civil servants and contractual staff at all levels, establishing an all-Pakistan National Executive Service for senior management posts. Number 9, creating of 4 specialized cadres under NES for economic management, technical, social sector management, and general management. Over 51% of voters backed by burqa ban in Switzerland, with a campaign spearheaded by rightist party in Alpine Nation. The US-based think tank's Freedom House released its annual report ranking countries based on their fulfillment of the support of democratic principles such as freedom of speech, belief, access to government institutions, and political participation. One of the surprises in the year's report was that India, ranked as free country until now, was demoted to 111th place among 162 countries and was now only partly free. Under national security dialogue, Pakistan plans to focus on its own issues and rising internal non-traditional threats, including the agenda were climate change, water security, food security, and host of other challenges. About 52% of the voluntary existing employees says that the managers or organizations could have done something to prevent them from leaving their jobs respectively, reports of Gallup survey. In 2020, hate crimes against Asian Americans went up by 150% with as many as 3,000 violent incidents throughout the US, says Bloomberg. Saudi Vision 2030 is a strategic framework to reduce Saudi Arabia's dependence on oil, diversify its economy, and develop public service sectors such as health, education, infrastructure, and recreation and tourism. In China, peer-reviewed studies reveal a 300% increase in violence against women. In Lebanon, there has been a 45% increase in violence against women. In the United Kingdom, violence against women has doubled from the 10-year average. Similar increases in violence have also been reported in Germany, Tunisia, India, and 25%. The pandemic has led to at least 21% increase in violence against women. The United Nations 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development focuses on coordinated action and considers the impact of biodiversity loss on other socio-economic factors. A global assessment by the Intergovernmental Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services covering the period between 1970 and 2050 revealed that the last 50 years of the pace and change has been unprecedented. More than 85% of wetlands have been lost, while 75% of the land and 66% of oceans have been significantly altered. Consequently, up to 1 million species of animals and plants face extinction. The vicious cycle of poverty is a result of various vicious cycles which were on the sides of supply and demand of capital. As a result, capital formulation remains low productivity and low real incomes. Global poverty. Children and youth account for two-thirds of the world's poor, and women represent a majority in most regions. Extreme poverty is increasingly concentrated in sub-Saharan Africa. About 40% of the region's people live on $1.90 a day. Joblessness jumped in 2018 and 19 labor survey. Out of 1.3 billion people that live in multidimensional poverty in developing nations, a staggering 1 in 3 are children, says United Nations Development Program. The World Food Program said that it needed as much as 220 million per month to help stave off deaths due to hunger. Extreme poverty rates nearly doubled in the Middle East and North Africa between 2015 and 2018, from 3.8% to 7.2%, mostly because of crises in Syria and Yemen. Although countries impacted by fragility, crisis, and violence are home to about 10% of the world's population, they account for more than 40% of people living in extreme poverty. By 2030, an estimate of 67% of the world's poor will live in fragile contexts. About 70% of people older than 15 who live in extreme poverty have no schooling or only some basic education. The UNHCR says over 82 million people are displaced across the world. The anti-poverty organization Oxfam says 11 people die of hunger each minute, and that the member facing famine-like condition around the globe has increased 6 times over the last year. UN agencies issued stark warning that 400,000 children risk death in 2021 from lack of food due to ongoing war in Yemen. As per 2019 figures, 690 million people were affected by hunger around the world. Food scarcity is one of the biggest challenges for the future. Global food insecurity is the leading threat in the world. More than 820 million people in the world were hungry in 2018. Biotechnology is providing the building block for a sustainable future and food security. 1.3 billion people in 107 developing countries, which account for 22% of the world's population, live in multidimensional poverty. About 84.3% of the multidimensional poor live in sub-Saharan Africa and South Asia. 644 million children are experiencing multidimensional poverty. About 9.2% of the world, or 986 million people, live in extreme poverty or less than $1.90 a day, according to World Bank. The United States, 10.5% of the population, 34 million people, live in poverty as of 2019. For an individual in the US, the poverty line is $12,800 a year, or about $35 per day. In 2019, acute hunger increased to 135 million people, of which 60% live in conflict or insecure countries. Yemen remained the world's worst food crisis, as estimated 15.9 million people, or more than half of the Yemen's population, were in crisis or worse situation. The UN Food Agency reported that the number of people on the edge of famine in 43 countries has risen to 45 million people as acute hunger spikes around the world.